In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Catherine Applegate and her husband Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, produced 54 main series books, several spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult following. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names. But we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on this series, book by book. I'm Eddie.
I'm Chris.
I'm Miranda.
And we're
the Anidorks!
These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
How do we even start a new book, you guys? This is our first time starting a new book.
A second
Did
book.
you open a Truly? Was that
Shut
a Truly?
Yeah.
This is book 2, The Visitor?
The Visitor. Right out the gate, I really do have to say, I actually really liked this book.
Yeah.
I found it more moving than the first book.
Yeah.
I was reading along Chris's notes, because Chris had read ahead of me, and Chris was making jokes about parts where I just had feelings. And I was like, that's not funny. I feel like the big question for me when I was starting this was just how different Rachel would be from Jake's narration. And I know that was on your mind too, Chris.
Yeah, she had Jake moments, but there was actually really novel insight into the group. She was
I felt
reading
that way
people
too.
more. Yeah.
Including that Jake is dumb. It's confirmed that Jake is dumb.
Yeah, he doesn't think that about himself quite as much as maybe he should.
Yeah.
He might just be a himbo. Like he
That's true.
I really felt like Marco read differently this book. Like
He read as more of a full person to me.
But he also, like, he was patently more ridiculous as well. Like, he was, like, so much more of a yuckster, like a Carlos on Magic School Bus type, you know? Like
Carlos.
Yeah. Carlos.
I thought he was funnier.
Than Carlos?
Also meaner.
Oh, yeah, okay. Because Carlos is really funny. It is interesting that the last book was Jake and he was the least visible character in a huge way, because it is like, if he had been more visible, the book would have read so differently. Like, it would have been like, okay, these books are about Rachel and Jake taking on the world.
Yeah.
And like, him actually deceiving Rachel in this book was like kind of a cool counterpoint to getting to know him in the last book. He was, it is interesting.
But, I mean, it is also something that, based on your information about Jake from the last book, you can totally see him doing. It seems totally in character with who you met last book.
I liked Jake maybe more than I ever did in the last pages of this.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's clear that in a very cousinly way, he cares a lot about Rachel, which was refreshing to see.
The book just felt way more complicated than the first book. Just way murkier, way like in every sense, like just like, and they complicated the big baddie of the first book too, you know? Or I guess not Visser 3. He's not complicated yet. I'm excited for the day when we empathize with Visser 3. But
we definitely learn about him though, and we learn about the Yeerks as a whole, and we get a lot of information about them as not just like opaque, vague bad guys.
Yeah.
There's distress in the Yeerk ranks, I felt like. Not everyone's happy with the hierarchy.
Yeah, who's been put where.
Yeah.
Which, like, so big is the first chip in the armor we've seen to date. You know, like, they accomplished literally nothing in the first book of use. They actually even did something stupid. They revealed that they exist.
Yeah.
And they saved one person who now is tremendously confused and a huge target. Like, they didn't put that person in the witness protection program. That person just got yerked straight away the next day.
They also said they were trying to save some Hork-Bajir, and I'm like, where are you going to send them?
Where are you going to put that? Where are you going to put that? Are you going to walk it every day?
He's going to live in the gardens?
Take care of
like,
it? What's
he going to do?
Should we do
Let's do it, yeah.
3 sentence.
Yeah, how does it work? One of us does 3, the other does 2, the last one does 1?
That is how we did it.
Miranda, do you want to do
Okay, I can try.
3
I can try.
sentences?
Recovering from their humbling defeat, the Animorphs follow up the only lead they have left. Period. After failing to connect emotionally with former friend Melissa Chapman, Rachel is forced to find another way into the Chapman home. Period. As lovable furball fluffer McKitty, Rachel gets herself into a little more trouble than she bargained for. Period. That's it.
Very good, very good. Eddie, I don't know if you're up for this, but like, you know, like when you're watching a show and it's like, meanwhile, back at the you know, like last week on Anidorks. Like,
Yeah.
can you do it in that sort of a like voice? Like
Me? I feel like
Yeah.
you threw the idea out there.
All right, I'll do it. Okay, I got this. Okay, I only have the first line, but it made me laugh a lot. In the ongoing battle against the Yeerks, chronic liar Rachel deceives her way into her friend's arms as her friend's beloved cat Fluffers McKitty. Newsflash, this is a new sentence. Newsflash, her friend's dad is that evil guy from book 1, y'all. and it doesn't go too well.
Okay.
1 sentence. Rachel, disguised as Cat, infiltrates the home of her former best friend, Melissa, to obtain information on said best friend's dad, Principal Chapman, a very important Yeerk. Period.
Nicely
right,
done.
yeah, that looks
Nicely
good.
done. Yeah, that's great. So, where are we at? What are we up to?
We are at the start of the
Yeah,
book.
we're starting the book. We're getting in there.
Oh my god.
This first chapter is just
This chapter is insane.
It's a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's a
They're
lifetime.
flying as birds, which first of all, the first thing that strikes me is that they're like, oh yeah, Cassie and Marco morphed the same osprey. And I'm
Oh,
like,
no,
that's
no,
really weird. Like, they're the same bird.
also, wouldn't the bird, I guess we're not in their perspective, but the birds would be freaking out, right? Because we
Internally-
find out when Fluffers does that
Yeah.
later.
Tobias says that dude the cat did that, and Jake as Homer freaked out when he saw Homer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with Rachel and Tobias, further confirming that Tobias is, even if he's not the primary perspective in the first 2 books, he is kind of the main character because he is who Rachel is also most interested in.
For sure.
Like Jake. And then they all kind of fly in like you would imagine. I don't know. It very obviously the book is trying to introduce them in intervals. Like Jake comes in and then Cassie and Marco after.
Yeah. It's like Jake like swoops by, he's like yelling, he's like, yeah!
yeah.
We get some zooms in there. Zoom is a word that is a classic sound effect in the Animorphs series already, and we get a few more. Because as they are flying, they get shot at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just, I don't
Yeah.
understand. This is like a vaguely residential area. And it's just firing.
Teenagers with ponytails.
They must have been 5 feet out of city limits. 'Cause
Firing wildly into the sky at a group of birds.
yeah.
At a national city.
Yeah.
At a ball
That was
field.
endangered at the time.
That's
Yeah.
what I wrote too. I put that in my notes.
Yeah, so they're flying around. What are... I think Tobias is teaching Rachel. They're on a date.
Yeah, you're
Tobias-
absolutely right. You're like absolutely right.
Uh,
And it's funny because they're on a date with other people. But it's which is like I
Which
don't
is
know,
what
like,
you did when you were 13.
when you're a kid. Yeah, it's like but that
Yes,
was a
yes,
very
it's-
datey moment. Yeah.
Yes, but I think Tobias is teaching Rachel how to fly, as Chris said, because Tobias already has 10,000 hours of flying.
Yeah, she mentioned, she's like, Tobias has too much practice.
I was just gonna say, like, Tobias is like goading Rachel into like doing something dangerous, you know, flying even higher and diving, I guess, or something absurd. And like Tobias misses the opportunity to say, like, are you a bald eagle or are you a chicken? Now is that too mean to say on a date? Absolutely. Would I do it for the vine? Absolutely.
vine.
For the vine. Look at all those. Look at all those ospreys.
Rachel compares it to, she says, forget surfing, forget skateboarding, forget snowboarding. And I thought it just was a very
They could have
90s.
said, forget the X Games.
Yeah.
I just have death sports aren't enough. Be burb. Oh, yes. And then I loved the emphasis on her imagining morphing to human in flight. It's a cool foreshadow if they ever do it. And like, it's a really weird thing to think about while you're flying.
It's so totally what I would think about, though. Like, I would have nothing but intrusive thoughts of myself hitting the ground. Like,
yeah. So they go and they, what does Rachel do? Rachel swoops down and steals the gun.
Yeah. They're getting shot at and they're able to somehow like dodge the bullets. Like they can see the muzzle flashes.
So fast, yeah.
And that to me is a bananas implication. Like, I mean, I'm sure they're really far away, but still.
The implication is kind of, if birds knew what guns were, they'd be fast enough to dodge them.
That is a crazy implication. And it's also like, I'm imagining a Matrix-style bullet time scene of exactly like Miranda just dove away for the podcast.
It's true.
Yeah.
How differently these books would go if one of them, I mean, this is true, I guess, in almost every one of these books, because this is not actually the first time these children have been shot at, is what just occurred to me. Not the last time.
Dragon beams sizzling the air in the last book.
What was the point? Was this just to have an exciting opening?
I think so.
I think so.
And I think it was to give a momentary stress reprieve, like to show that it's not all bad times. Because I think
they're getting shot.
Yeah, but they're winning the day, Miranda. They're free fall and they're like they're doing all the things they need to do.
They zoom down there.
Zoom, like a Mazda.
And one of them takes the gun. Mm-hmm. And Marco, they observe that these are teenagers who are shooting them. And Marco takes a beer and then scolds them. But Tobias is just like shredding this guy's face.
Well, he did it once before in the last book.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's
the Hork-Bajir, he pulled a knife.
Yeah. So I'm like, we open with like pretty gory violence and underage drinking.
Yeah, I mean, like, something about this book that I just feel like is a trend is this book is like, I feel like it's a gorier book. It's such a heavy book. It's just so heavy. Like, everything's dialed up to 11.
I feel like she's really dialing into the implications of everything that she set up in the first book.
Yeah.
So, like, what is it like to have a yerk in your head?
This book is like, hey, you know all those weird concepts we talked about in the first book? We're not going to forget that we said that. We're not shying away from it. Like, that's what we're doing. And it's not going to be comfy all the time.
So after they clutch the rifle, I just wrote, like, they were, like, whoever, was it Rachel grabbed the gun? Rachel grabbed the gun? Is that true?
Yeah,
I think so.
Rachel grabs the gun, Marco grabs the beer, and then Rachel's like, there's no thermals in the cool forest to ride up on, and the rifle's too big to fly with, and yet it's not an issue, actually. They just, it's just a thing that we talk about, and then she throws it into the sea, throws the gun into the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lesson being, pre-9/11 patriotism, don't shoot at a bald eagle. But
abandon your weapons of war.
Right, but you're allowed to make that mistake, and you're allowed to probably take the gun on a plane with you, because why not? It's pre-9/11.
I love imagining the people who saw this bald eagle flying past with a gun and saluting it.
That is the symbol of America.
Yes, exactly. With 2 ospreys, a peregrine falcon, and a red-tailed hawk. Dude, this whole gang is gonna get found out by the fucking birders, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, the birders are gonna, birders are gonna see this and be like, weird phenomenon of friend birds is likely children morphed into birds. Like,
only explanation.
Published in Nature.
Some guys got like an InfoWars style, like, which animals are animorphs. Like,
our children are turning into birds.
What
they're turning the kids into birds with their liberal agenda.
There are pages of them morphing back into.
Oh my god, it goes on for ages.
Dude, and that's what I'm talking about. So hold on. I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's them like jumping into a different experience other than like a prepubescent boy. And if it's like other, like girls' bodies change first. I don't know what the theory is. Her descriptions are so much more bodily. And she notices every detail. Maybe we haven't seen one of their group morphs before, but like, why did we spend so much time talking about everybody's flavor of morph? Like, that's what I want to know.
We get Cassie's really good at morphing, and she can make her arms stay as osprey wings. While Cassie has her angel wings, Jake is very into it. He's just staring at her. And personally, just picking up some of the threads that Eddie left off, in our readings of the first book, I think Jake being into a bird girl has some real potential for Jake Tobias' future.
Oh, that's a good point. It's just a stepping stone. Yeah.
Starter crush. Yeah. Yeah, maybe he's confused because it's the first time he's taking note of Cassie. Actually,
he's like, whoa, Cassie looks like Tobias.
Also, so we know Rachel has interest in Tobias, right? Is she looking at red-tailed hawk Tobias and remembering human Tobias, or has it...
No, I think... No. You know that saying, like, you're most beautiful when you're truly yourself sort of thing? I think there's some of that going on here. I mean, like Tobias has regrets, but he doesn't have regrets yet. Like, it's been... And don't they say it's been 1 week? At some point, they say it's been 1 week that he's been a hawk. Like, holy cow, man, barely any time has passed. Like, this is all so new still.
They're still in shock.
I mean, I guess a week was like forever at that age. So Marco, Harry Boyleg shooting out of the bird body.
Oh, yeah.
I question, again, like scooting, I enjoy the verb choice, but also, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Are they shooting? What speed are some of these things happening at? Are some of them flying out and some of them are slowly emerging?
Yeah.
They say it takes several minutes to morph, and I'm like, why? Everything you describe as happening seems to happen very, very fast. Like,
not to mention the fact that we constantly have to be reminded you can hear spines shrinking and stretching and grinding and just like...
and she describes it once as like a weird itch, like it should hurt, but it doesn't exactly, and like...
Oh my god. One of my favorites from the morph was when Rachel was talking about her tongue changing size, and she said, the tongue grew fat in my mouth. And I just heard that read aloud, and I was like, but why, guys? Like, why? Like, why? Like, imagine it. No, seriously. I want you guys to imagine this. Imagine you have a tiny little bird beak, and now imagine your head's getting bigger, and now imagine what it would feel like if you had a really tiny tongue, and then it grew fat in your mouth. Like, I can't live in a world. I can't do this. I can't do this, guys. There's 52 books. I might need to tap out next book.
They talk a lot more about how it feels to be back in a human body after having had the privileged senses of...
Yeah, Tobias talks about that a bit in the first book, and they all kind of give him the, whatever, but now Jake immediately, like, the first thing he says is the same thing, like, it feels wrong not to be able to fly.
Jake can't stop talking about he will talk about the spider he ate.
Forever.
Yeah. We also get a description of Jake. Jake is kind of a big guy, strong looking with brown hair and serious dark eyes. And I had imagined Jake is kind of maybe tall but really skinny, so it was interesting to hear that he's strong. I guess in the first book I was imagining him we kept hearing him compare himself to his older brother.
Yeah, who was a basketball player, and you think of them as being kind of like tall and spindly or... Yeah,
spindly, yeah. Yeah, but Jake is actually, I guess we kind of knew this, he's one of the jocks of the group.
Yeah.
He's more physically strong than most of them, yeah. And Marco is tiny.
He's so insecure about his height.
Yeah.
Which Rachel picks up on. Unlike Jake. Jake never mentioned that one.
And Rachel says, most girls think he's really cute, but being small bothers him. And when I hear that, I'm like, Rachel is going to use this against him.
It's also like Rachel is privy to what all the girls are thinking about him, and she is not gonna tell him. Like, she is not gonna...
Yeah.
She's not gonna be like, nobody cares that you're short, everybody thinks you're really cute.
This has the first, really rough Marco line in the whole book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this one's like, look, like they talk about seeing well like isn't always the best thing. Like Marco's like, look, Jake, how many times have you been walking around the mall or whatever, and you'll see a girl who seems good looking from far off, but when you get closer, it turns out she's a dog. I mean, if you could see this well all the time, and then Rachel cuts in, and then Marco replies, I wasn't being sexist. It goes both ways. Like, which is how they get to her saying that he's short. But
yeah, because he's like, I look taller from far away.
But just like, that's going to happen a handful of times in this book. Like, there's going to be a handful of jokes like that. I just kind of am imagining Marco as like an edgelord troll from now, but in the 90s. Like,
but also like, you know how when you get closer, she's a dog? Like, that's suddenly a very real concern for them that I don't think he has evaluated.
That's true. Mm-hmm. He needs to realize that talking about animals that way is going to be real confusing from here on out.
Yeah, one day he may see a beautiful girl dog. Who knows what he'll do?
Yeah. The tomcat thing that we'll get to later is very
my god,
strange.
dude. Oh my god. Oh my god. I loved it too.
So at this point, it's not till the end of chapter 2. Rachel this entire time has been sitting on the fact that Tobias is trapped in Hawk-Morph, and she hints at it. She says things.
It was like 4 pairs of shoes for the 5 of us.
Yeah, and it's like, who are you foreshadowing this for, Rachel?
We read the book.
It's before
also,
shadowing.
She's delivering it as like for an audience, and it's like, is it? I'm just always wondering who they're supposed to be narrating this.
Well, it's for who I always think of it as like a found diary type of thing.
Yeah.
Like later in the book, she says, it was a dark and stormy night. Sorry, I've always wanted to write that.
Yeah.
Like, so they clearly allude to them actually writing these. These are not like, these are like messages.
That's a really good point.
So they're going home. On the way home, with Tobias flying as a hawk, we start to talk about the limitations of, like, cross-species thought speech.
Right.
And that, like, they can't think things to him. He can think things to them, but he has to be able to physically hear them.
Which is bizarre. One would imagine if you have this, like, alien technology imbued inside you that can let you morph, like, I wonder why it's, like, only when the morph thing is activated. Rule of convenience. I think it's a literary device.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
There must have been some moment. I bet there was one moment that they wrote, and like you're saying, Chris, it was more narratively interesting, or they needed to have it in place for some reason, and then they just had to stick with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Marco's going on and on again about how cool it would be to be able to morph if it were not for the fact that we had to fight the Yeerks. Mm-hmm. And he again mentions that he could be on Letterman.
Mm-hmm. He even mentions a specific Letterman bit. He mentions stupid pet tricks.
Yep.
Which is
I feel like this is the first of many moments in there where I'm reminded that these are not actually children talking. When he says, I'm talking show business, I just feel like no 12-year-old
says that. I mean, if there was a 12-year-old who said that, it would be the same 12-year-old who said, supermodels. Like, I'm going to hook up with supermodels. It's like, why do you even want that? It's like, I don't know, but I saw it in a cigarette commercial.
Cassie also says something. She says we'd be hot in horror movies, and I don't think she means in like
a sexy way.
She clearly means like, oh, we'd be hot, like we'd like popular. But
this is before Paris Hilton. That's hot.
That's hot.
Yeah,
true. The obvious inspiration for Cassie.
Yeah,
Paris Hilton.
No,
yes,
no.
Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton's famous "The Simple Life."
They go back to the construction site.
They go past it. They pointedly don't go through it. They don't wanna. They're too hurt.
And this is something we should just note, that there's going to be a lot of returning to what happened in the first book here that we'll probably mostly skim over, but they're really worried that people missed the first book.
They're showing clips of the last episode like you would not believe. Like it is.
Cassie, though, there's lots of hints of how they're already traumatized. Kind of like Miranda, you already hinted at this. Rachel can't bear to even narrate for the reader what happened to the Andalite prince.
Which is bizarre because she gets so close. She gets right to the moment, and it's like, just finish the job, kill him.
I'll tell you though, when she says you'll have to ask Jake, I'm like, is Jake always excited to talk about what happened to the Andalite prince? He's like, oh my god, it was so cool. You should have seen it. He used the tail. Like,
Hold on, I want to find what I wrote about it because I remember
it was really funny.
It was stupid, but it was just
chapter 3.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about that. Go trigger, Jake.
That is what. I don't want to talk about that. Go trigger, Jake. It's just like it's so silly.
And then Cassie is also having her moment. You know what's worse than the screams? She says the way they stop screaming once the yerk is in their heads. Once they become controllers, then you know they are slaves again, lost. So Cassie's having her moment, and then Jake says, "Like Tom." We both turned, it was Jake, and Tom is Jake's brother, and he's, as we know, a human controller. And then Cassie puts her arm around Jake's waist, which was like hint about their flirting.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote, let's let go of his waist.
Yeah.
This is the first time we talk about nightmares this book, but it is like a recurring theme.
Jake investigated the door to the yerk pool.
Right.
And they sealed it.
Yep, they were like, no more of that.
Yeah. They got in through where? And
we're only
also,
going in through that tiny hole at the top from now on.
I put a bunch of Brillo pads and steel wool in there. They shouldn't be able to shoot through that.
Do you think any of the yerks accidentally go up that stairwell and then they forget that they sealed it?
And they have to walk the whole way,
all the way back down
without a handrail.
Oh man!
And people are just at the bottom clapping and laughing when they come back down. They're like, dude, Ted went up the steps again.
There's like a sign that says like 0 days since anyone went up the sealed staircase.
And then Rachel's the only one who points out that they have the advantage of being thought of as Andalite warriors.
Right.
And I just think that it's a critical detail because like Rachel is playing that 4D chess now. And then later kind of like just drops the ball on giving a shit about any of that. And yet is like the one who called it out was like anyway.
So this is the moment where we get they introduce basically the big plot of the book, which is Melissa Chapman. So they're assistant vice principal.
Assistant
principal.
Yeah,
what is his title?
Chapman.
Where's his business?
Yeah, it's assistant principal Chapman.
That his daughter Melissa was a good friend of Rachel's, her second best friend, but they've kind of lost touch because Melissa got kind of strange and distant, and probably for the past week at least, Rachel's also gotten strange and distant because she's turning into animals. It seems like it's already in the air. Because Jake just says if there was some way for us to get close to Chapman, and Rachel already knows that he's thinking of Melissa and basically trying to use her as an in to exploit Chapman as intel, basically, about what
she can sort of sense that everybody's circling around that point where nobody wants to ask her, hey, do you want to like lie to your friend and exploit your relationship for this? But like,
I know you and Melissa aren't cool, but could you be cool? Like,
Chris, in your notes, you seem confused why Rachel is uncomfortable with this.
It doesn't seem like one of those things of like, oh, I'm violating some principle here. If you tell me there's an alien slug in my friend's dad who I haven't talked to in 6 months and he's our chief enemy, I'll call my friend. Like, I'll call my friend and be like,
she has to lie to her. And that's what feels bad.
What's
and she
the
has to lie
lying
to her.
part?
And not only
What's the lying part again?
She's not telling her why she's
Why is that lying?
Well, lying through omission.
It's a lie of omission. She has to go up, and it's not that she doesn't care about her friend, but she has to act like suddenly, for no particular reason, she's really interested in why they haven't been talking. And that feels bad because she knows that she's not really all that interested in what's going on in Melissa's life.
Maybe I'm just basic, but like sometimes a person will come up in your life again after not talking to them for a while. You're right that it's disingenuous and that she has a mission. I just like, there's nothing wrong with calling your friend.
I think the position that Rachel's in this book is that she already had, and this is not, I don't know how much of this is on the page, but this is also what I'm hearing and what Miranda's saying, but this is also how I read Rachel, is that now she has to deal with the fact that she already knew something was up with Melissa. Like she keeps showing up to school with her eyes all puffy and she just seems distant and sad. And she has to deal with the fact that wasn't enough for her to start talking to Melissa and asking her if she's okay. I feel like throughout the book, she's kind of dealing with the fact that like, I'm only doing this now that I know that there's this very important thing happening, but like she's going to get a better glimpse of how much Melissa's been suffering through.
Yeah, and she feels like a shitty friend.
I like this drama that happens here between Rachel and Marco, too, where Marco accuses Rachel of weaseling because of this Melissa thing. Rachel says, I don't like using a friend that way. And Marco says, oh, suddenly the mighty Rachel is weaseling. You don't like using your friends? You're pretty willing to risk my life. Sure, Marco, but who said you were my friend? Very funny, Marco said. But at the same time, he looked a little hurt. I just love all of the Marco.
It's so good.
And then, yeah.
And then she's like, she makes sure he knows. She's just kidding.
Gotta protect the fragile boys. Gotta protect them. They're so fragile.
We love a short, soft king.
Don't we, though?
Yeah.
So the next day, Rachel has agreed to exploit her second best friend after Cassie. And she gives us a nice description of
I just don't see what's wrong with exploiting your second best friend. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
And then just weird, this is just a side note, like it's not really important, but like she says she's okay at vaulting in parallel bars. Parallel bars isn't a girl's event.
Mm-hmm. It's the uneven bars.
So there's a line that says, we have balance beams and uneven parallel bars, which is A, impossible.
They're not parallel, yeah.
And B, like, two events smashed together.
To me, this sentence reads very much like Kay Applegate doesn't know gymnastics, and she is doing whatever the 1997 equivalent
of Wikipedia
is.
Copy
yeah,
and
exactly.
paste.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, so a gym classroom would have balance beams, and she just quickly sees uneven parallel bars. And a vaulting horse with the springboard. I'm not convinced that she knows what any of these things are as she writes. But there's also a line, I love this. Besides, it's just cool. Hitting the little springboard and flipping through the air to bounce off the vaulting horse and stick the landing. I was like, neither of us knows what this is describing.
That is it's an extremely vague description of how a vault would occur.
But true to the book's consistency, it's an extremely vague, very specific description.
I mean, she's no Michaela Maroney. They say this is a recreational class, but
yeah,
it's for all my gymnastics fam out there.
That was good. That was a good joke. That's the joke we needed. You sensed it, and
that's
you
the
delivered
joke
it. Yes, exactly.
Anyway, Melissa looks like
a wreck. Just looks
like an elf who has been sobbing uncontrollably.
Yeah, there are so
Melissa,
many good
get it
Chris
together.
notes coming with this. Melissa gave me the kind of not very warm smile. Rachel has enough information that she should not be describing the smile this way. But they kind of have an awkward interaction, right? They talk about going to the mall.
Yeah, Rachel says she needs some new shoes. And Melissa's like, oh, yeah, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah, it's not really top priority for me right now, but like...
It doesn't seem like this comes naturally to Rachel either, which I appreciated, though I'm not sure if that's...
She's trying to play it cool. Yeah. This whole book is Rachel, play cool. That's the whole book.
I also just really love when she's like, it's like, what have you been up to? And Rachel's like, oh, nothing much, same old. And then it's like the next line is, that was a lie. Like, there's a lot of blah, blah, blah. I lied in this book.
Oh, man. And that's the Jake in her, because Jake was doing the same thing.
For a moment, a look of extraordinary sadness darkened her eyes and tugged downward at the corners of her mouth. I also love that we, for some reason, needed a named coach.
Yeah.
We'd better get we'd better get out there, or Coach Elway will have a fit. We needed that. He's gonna show up. He's gonna have his own.
He's a controller. Yes.
He's a controller. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then after Rachel does get out of gymnastics and decides to walk home, she's like, I was thinking about going shopping, but Melissa kind of wrecked the vibe.
Yeah, she really kind of harshed my mellow.
I laughed so hard today.
Well, what I wrote was Melissa wrecked the vibe with her dead eyes.
And she also says, I didn't really feel like mall crawling anymore, which is also, I just don't think anyone ever does.
Yeah.
Do you want to go mall crawling?
Super old.
Is that where you go from one mall to another mall to another mall?
Yeah.
And then in what is an unfortunately Very, very real, very common occurrence for 12 and 13-year-old girls.
Dude, this
a man
was so
just
scary.
started harassing her and trying to get him to get in her car.
Yeah. Holy shit,
And
dude.
I'm so, like, upset and mad at her for, like, blaming herself for walking home alone. She's so, like, this was stupid. I let my concentration slip and I walked home alone. And I'm like, this is not your fault. Like, do not put this on you. But also, you did not handle the situation well. Because Rachel's bright idea is to semi-morph into an elephant and scare this man into running away from her.
Yeah. The only thing I think that she did wrong was not like making it look like the man wrecked his car so that he got in more trouble. I think that would have been great. Like, I don't know. I just I wanted more vengeance.
Yeah, I don't know. This one just I was just mad at her because it's so obviously a bad idea to reveal yourself as being able to morph. And if that ever got back to literally anybody, if he described that to any controller, any human controller, they would know, A, that, he had seen the Andalite, and B, that Andalite, I guess they would assume, had acquired a human morph. Or, based on later information, they might even know that she's a human, because it seems to imply, at one point, that at least as of yet, they cannot morph directly from one species to another. They have to go back.
Right. If you see the chain, I mean, maybe if you're a high enough level morpher, maybe.
Maybe.
You can morph.
We may learn about that later, but as yet, that has not happened.
I wonder if this will happen again, but I feel like this was a little moment where K.A. Applegate was deciding to let go of the stakes of the world and went more towards wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this moment where Rachel can become an elephant.
No, I think that's a really good point.
Which is, I think it'll just be interesting. We'll have to keep track. Because right now, 2 human beings know these are 12-year-olds, not
or
animals,
have reason
right?
to suspect.
Because
I don't know if they
really
know what they
understand
saw at all.
Those weren't Andalites. Yeah.
Did you guys have a feeling when we shifted out? So they described the person harassing her as a high school, college age boy, and he was a rando. He's not somebody we know. And then immediately after she gets herself out of that situation, then another patriarchal figure enters the scene with a similar oppressive attitude and energy, which was kind of just a palpable transition for me.
Yeah.
One man told her to get in her car and she turned into an elephant and had wish fulfillment. Another man who's a Yeerk, who's controlled by Yeerk, but still a man and a dad and whatever, and her friend's dad tells her to get in a car and she literally can't refuse.
Right. It's a situation that on the surface should be much safer than the one she was in, but is actually much more dangerous.
Right, yeah.
But they look so the same at surface level. They're presented in very much the same package.
Yeah.
Which is it's possibly the most I don't know how to say words anymore, but it's possibly the most juxtaposition-y thing that I've seen in these books. It takes place in the course of a couple pages, but it seems like a very blatant juxtaposition. It seems very
Yeah. The world, there's the different threats in the world for Rachel than there were for
exactly, yeah.
Jake.
And it's the first time in this story that information has sort of been given to us just in the subtext of how 2 events were positioned.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, thank you.
I thought it was also strange that, at first I thought that Melissa and the principal, Chapman, totally missed what happened, but instead they say, when we were stuck back at the red light, it looked like some guy was bothering you. So they saw that this older man...
But they were stuck at a red light, man.
But they were stuck in a red light. What did we do? Melissa tries to get out of the car, and he says, nope, we'll wait.
Well, what is it? What are 2 little girls going to do against this guy that one little girl couldn't do?
But what was Chapman doing there?
Driving the car.
Oh, well, he is also Yeerk.
Yeah,
he's Yeerk. Maybe he doesn't know how an adult man would normally behave in this situation.
I also love that Rachel's commenting on herself when she says that the man who was bothering her was just picking something up he dropped by the side of the road. And then she thinks to herself, pathetic! I was such a lame liar.
But it's all you do, all book, baby.
There's also a Chapman line. This is just so strange. This is presumably the Yeerk saying this, because the Yeerks seem to have none of the information that the human hosts, the hosts have. Chapman says, so this is presumably the Yeerk speaking. The man who was bothering her, he went off running like the hounds of Hades were after.
They just shoved a classics book down his throat before they sent him to the planet. They were like, this only happened 700 years ago. That's pretty recent,
should still be relevant, yeah. I'm just above where it's I tried not to shiver, the brain being dominated, when just that energy of her being sick to her stomach as Chapman's you should get in the car, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, I'm fine. I could use the exercise. And he's like, nonsense, young lady. Sounding like his usual assistant. It's beginning to rain. Get it?
It's beginning to rain.
Yeah, it's so creepy. Nothing makes my skin crawl in life more than somebody giving a reason for you to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And it in this thing, it's super creepy, but it's Eddie, it happens to us all the time. It's you're take the umbrella, it's gonna rain. Or I don't know, we do it to each other.
And you're my skin crawled as I knew that the Yeerk dominated his brain.
Well, I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I know that Eddie's been Yeerked for a long time, and that, that was a choice Eddie made long ago. Yeah, I'm I don't know. I support the decision.
There's a moment where Chris describes in the notes how it doesn't sound so bad having a Yeerk.
Oh, that's way later because the Yeerk is talking about how they're afraid that their host is going to fight back and make a mess up at work. And I'm like, oh my God, it just occurred to me. The Yeerk has to do my job. I get all the credit. I get all the money. And then when the Yeerk pops out my ear, I'm 5 years older.
That's a big if the Yeerk pops out your ear.
I don't know. I like to believe in the power and inventiveness of children. Miranda,
you're eventually I'm not going to be a very useful host, and they're going to take this Yeerk out of my ear, and they're just going to let me be.
Judging from what we've seen so far, I think there is so much sitcom material in Yeerks trying to pass themselves off as
very much
jobs, because it sounds like no one's keeping their jobs once the Yeerks get in there.
Just in a surge in unemployment.
A really bizarre constellation of sabbaticals were all taken at once.
After a mix-up at the Yeerk pool, we all taught the wrong subject on Tuesday.
Greek mythology.
Or they accidentally keep giving away space travel secrets in physics class. They're puny humans. Quantum mechanics is for flawed premise. It's Morbo from
I know we get to Rachel's home wife.
Yeah.
Which her mom is a lawyer. Her parents are divorced, which is actually very interesting.
It's really cool. It's a big deal that there's a main character who comes from a family that is not dysfunctional but is divorced.
Yeah, still very different privilege levels, though, for the other people who had sadder existences or were orphaned, even.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Why am I giggling?
Why are you giggling? That's a great point.
All those stupid orphans.
There's
Marcos.
I was talking about Tobias.
Maybe you're thinking Melissa.
I was thinking about Tobias' orphan.
It's so funny the way that Marco's mother is never found her body at sea, and
is it sea or a lake? They just say she drowned. I feel like maybe
small lake, and they just didn't look.
She drowned in our above ground pool. They never found her body.
I just feel like Marco's mom has been flagged for us in a way that even the parents who are on screen, like who we're interacting with, are.
Yeah, Jake's
That's
parents
true.
don't get a second mention this book. Tobias's dead parents don't even get a second mention this book, or
That's
his shitty
true.
aunt and uncle. The only one who gets mentioned again is Marco's mom.
So it sounds like Marco's mom is coming back, and Tobias's parents are definitely not coming back. They're gone forever, or they're already birds. So Rachel's mom is a lawyer, and the dad is a weatherman.
That's true. He's the local weatherman.
Why?
And there's a picture of him in front of a storm map, like around the house.
If I had a partner and children, and my partner was a weatherman, and we got divorced, I would tear that picture down first. Like that would be the first picture to go. I would put like a hurricane marker over him.
So we know that Rachel's mom is a lawyer, not just because Rachel tells us.
Oh, yes, there are context clues.
Because she says, I'm sorry, but I have this brief and I have court in the morning, which is kind of like the springboard and
the flipping over the vaulting horse.
We are on page 40.
Oh, yeah. So Rachel comes home. She asks about her sisters, and they're watching scary movies. We hear about her sisters. We don't really meet them. She calls Jake, and she, in typical lying Rachel fashion, comes up with a cover story in case Tom's on the phone. And is like, do you want to listen to that new album? And then she's like, there was no album.
That actually was like a thing growing up. I remember when kids started smoking weed, they'd talk about like coming over to listen to CDs.
Well, what else are you going to do when you're sitting there stoned?
Which I think is what happens when they come.
They immediately get stoned.
The friends come over and there is no... It's not, their scene isn't set at all. I don't know where they're hanging out, but I just assumed that there
I assume it's probably her room or something.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting because it sounds like these are all this is like a new group of friends, kind of forced through circumstance, and there's no, who are these people coming over to the house?
Well, Jake's her cousin, Cassie's already her best friend, Marco's Jake's best friend, and Tobias is a bird. So
it's an excellent point.
You're gonna love my new friend Tobias. You're gonna love my new friend.
Here's my bird and my boyfriend.
He's also the new kid at school, so he's just trying to fit in. Please be nice to him. Rachel, what's that rapping at your window? Is that a boy? Mom, you're not gonna believe this.
The cat gets introduced in a really fun way. It's not Rachel just immediately thinks, oh, that's right, Melissa has a cat. They're looking at a photo of her and Melissa from a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. This was so good. I love this.
And she says, I got up and I went over to take the frame down. It was a picture taken a couple years ago of Melissa and me. So she gets up, goes to get the picture. It's me and Melissa. It was like her 12th birthday or some birthday anyway. And we were out playing with the present her dad gave her. I think it's just little details like this make that friendship so much sadder in this book.
That's true.
It really...
Yeah.
She puts care into... like that photo is still up on her wall of them when they were close. And she hasn't quite gotten to the point where she might take it down or something.
Yeah,
right.
And then she sees
that's
the cat in the picture.
Yeah. Now I feel like a horrible person for laughing at their terrible friendship.
And that's how we get to the cover of the book.
Yes.
Rachel's gonna morph into a cat, and we have to go find him.
It's time to pet someone's cat without asking.
We're gonna get this cat, but we need a way to get this cat to come to us, because obviously you like, have you ever tried to approach a cat? They scare it up a tree.
Right, it's an
indoor-outdoor cat.
It's
which,
an indoor-outdoor cat?
Fun tip, if you want to increase the lifespan of your cat, bring it inside. Bring it inside.
Not to mention, if you have an indoor-outdoor cat, that cat is also 8 other people's cat. Like, for sure.
Absolutely, there's one that hangs out on my back porch all the time.
I like to think that this was an indoor cat until the Chapmans got yerked. And then they were like, we can't kill the cat, but we can decrease the lifespan if we just let it outside.
Just build this little door.
It's just punching a hole through the door. It's an out there cat now.
We also meet the identity of the cat. Did we talk about that officially yet? We talked about,
No.
We hinted at it. The name of this cat is Fluffers McKitty, which is just, so we have Dude, Homer, and Fluffers McKitty. And
It's
Tobias.
a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. It's a home run. It's a triple play. It is.
As Miranda was saying, we chase this cat up a tree, and we think to ourselves, how do we get it? Also, like, Rachel gets cut up. like cut up
Oh, yeah.
before the cat runs up the tree. Like, this is a bloody gory, like, and it's basically a PSA on don't go petting strange cats.
Oh yeah, Cassie's like, this is a tomcat, an unneutered tomcat hunting at dusk, like, and we're gonna try to touch it without gloves. Like,
So they like have to get this, they make the mistake of like trying to just pick up the cat thinking it'll be chill. Cat runs up a tree, cuts Rachel up good on the way up, and then she's like, yeah, Cassie was right about the gloves, but I'm not going to tell her for like a week because I'm weird.
and Jake's like, how's it going? And she's like, I'm bleeding and the cat's in a tree.
And then she has this terrible idea
Oh.
to get the cat out of a tree. I swear to God, like, the like metaphor here is just too messed up. Like, it's just too meshed. Again, she's going to make herself a target.
There's a
Like,
constant theme of predator versus prey in this book, for sure.
And her having to put herself in the prey position time and time again to solve, like, it's just
to solve
it's
other
too
people's
weird.
problems.
Yeah, it's just too weird.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So the only thing I was just thinking is, so the book is called The Visitor. It is also, the vibe of it is a spy novel, because that's what Rachel's doing, is going in
that's a good point.
to enemy territory and spying. And that's why she's lying so much. But and so I wonder if somehow that predator prey thing came out of those circumstances, because kind of Rachel leveling up in this book is that she becomes more of a predator.
Yeah, no, there's like a metaphorical cat and mouse game going on at the same time as a cat and mouse, like a literal cat and mouse game.
That is a
and
very
then
good
she
point, too,
becomes
yeah.
the cat by the end of the book.
Literally cat, figuratively a mouse. It's many cat mouse levels. It's cat mouse inception.
I'm really curious, and we're only on book 2. And we have a ways to go still in book 2. I'm really curious if this is a consistent theme in Rachel books. Or if it's just for this book, but none of this was there. Jake just did not have interiority compared to Rachel.
He had no real problems. None. Like, not a one.
Yeah.
Except
His brother
had problems, and he made those, he had so much privilege, he made his brother's problems his problems.
So Rachel's gonna morph into a mouse. Tobias runs off to get her one. And Cassie makes sure everybody knows that this is a shrew. This is a full-grown shrew. This is not a baby mouse. It is, in fact, a smaller creature.
I have a note on that. I have a note on that. A shrewd observation from Cassie.
Oh.
I laughed when I read it.
You laughed just now.
I also thought that it was, I assumed it was a book joke that I missed. I didn't know it was you. I thought you were noting a joke in the book.
It was me making a terrible joke.
I also didn't feel like I got a chance to observe for myself that this was a terrible idea, because I was reading Chris's notes at the same time, and Chris just commented so many times, what a terrible idea this was. And it is. I mean, if there is a shrew already around,
use the shrew.
Isn't it possible that would be enough to get the cat down?
But how do you get the shrew to stay where you need it to stay?
Stay what you need
in
to
harm's
stay.
way.
Stay what you need. No.
So Rachel winks up at Tobias for luck after acquiring this morph.
Yeah, does a finger gun. Call back to the first chapter.
And then it's time for her to morph into a shrew. Which Marco makes a very nasty joke that she won't have changed at all.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Why? You just like antagonizing women.
I like the banter.
The back
between,
and forth.
We need more banter. Yeah, the back and forth.
It reminds you of the sexism you grew up with. No.
It's nostalgia.
Really put Rachel in her place. You know? No.
I just like the Rachel and Marco banter.
It is they're good foils to each other. It's true. I'm giving you a...
She feels her tail sprout.
Oh yes, we get a sprout. And then she scooted past a beetle.
Past a beetle. I have that highlighted. She scooted.
She also feels there's a slight grinding noise as her backbone collapses.
Oh my god.
Into a size smaller than her little finger.
My god.
She also refers to herself then as a chubby little ball of fur. And then
I had that
Valley
like-
Boy hadn't been invented yet.
that's a whole mood. Like, yeah, I am a chubby little ball of fur. Well, it's cute right up until the point that she starts smelling maggots and dead flesh and recognizing them as food. And she's like, and so she's fighting the fear of this shrew brain because she's off like a freaking bat out of hell. She is crazy. She's like, I cannot stay in one place. I am too scared. And this is like, they talk about that she and Jake were the first to morph animals that are like truly afraid.
Yeah.
So they've morphed mostly larger, more powerful animals, if not predators, at least like prey with a chance. In a way that, like, the shrew and the small lizard are really kind of not. And Tobias talks her down. Good old Tobias. Coming in with that thought speech. But it isn't until he picks her up that she really starts listening.
And he was so gentle with those powerful talons of his.
That's right. He's like, I didn't hurt you, did I?
I just also want to note that Jake did not have to go through this in book 1. Jake did not have any maggot dreams. He got to turn into a dog and have Tobias pet him. Rachel has to go through so much. Like, I guess Jake ate a spider.
Jake ate a spider. He still has not recovered from that. So she's back. She's here. She's ready to lure this cat down from the tree. And Cassie makes what is a very timely, only been on for about 7 years at the time, Simpsons reference. Because Marco's like, cat versus mouse, who would you bet on? And she's like, haven't you seen Itchy and Scratchy? But also, she's not a mouse. Cassie really was like, that's the hill she wants to die on. Also, that and get your rabies vaccine. So yeah, she waits for certain death, essentially, and is just trusting that her friends are going to catch this cat before it kills her. And they do.
In the nick of time. And
Just
everybody
barely.
gets cut up. Marco's like, I'm bleeding. Cassie's like, we're all bleeding, Marco.
Rachel shoots up from the ground, further calling into question how fast these
Right.
go. Yeah.
And nobody says anything.
As fast as they need to.
And she's just like, not doing that again. That was horrible. Horrible.
And Jake just can't get out of his own head. He's brought up the spider, I think 2 or 3 times in these.
And
in
he's
4
like, I
pages.
should have become a lizard for you. Like, I'd already done it once. And she's like, nobody fucking asked you.
Yeah, Jake, that's not on you.
Yeah.
And he's like,
And he says, at least you didn't eat a spider.
Did you?
Let me tell you about the maggots, Jake. This guy, the guy that harasses Rachel, has to be in this book to play off of all this other stuff.
It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
That's what,
Which is
remarkably sophisticated for the type of book we're talking about.
That's
not even the type, just the length. Like, it's so hard to have something be in, like, something small like that be in a story and not feel unnecessary, but it really doesn't feel unnecessary. Like, that's the game of the short story and novella, is only writing what you need to write. And like, I wouldn't have thought to write that, but it works really, really nicely.
Rachel appears to people as prey, but is actually
a predator.
That's kind of like the one sentence summary of her arc. Right?
That would have been
That's
a better.
the actual one sentence summary of the book.
We got there.
Of her internal journey.
How many years later is it? It's like 25 years later, and we finally got the one sentence summary of book 2.
There's also a funny bit here where Rachel's talking about the sense that she's containing these 4 animals inside of her.
Well, Cassie's the one who's like, it's so cool, right? You're like there's an elephant in you, and like a this in you, and a that in you.
And a shrew, and an eagle, and a cat.
Yeah, and that's what makes Rachel, like, reflect on it. She says, inside of me I had animals that ate one another.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think anybody wanted you to have to think of that. I
don't know why I swallowed the fly. It's like...
Because at this point, we've gotten Fluffer in the cage, and Fluffer has chilled out now that he's in the cage. She's like, whatever. This is a cat carrier. I've been in one of these. I'm just going to chill out. And so she casually acquires Fluffer, and then she's like, I'm pretty exhausted. I think we should call it. And they're like, yeah. And they were like, let's let Fluffer go.
The last thing I'll say that feels like an important sci-fi alert is Cassie poses a morph limit.
Yeah, she wonders if there's a limit to how many different kinds of creatures you can store within you.
Which I feel like the book's not going to miss an opportunity for them to have so many morphs.
But will they have to get rid of old ones somehow?
I feel like it's an empty threat also, or it'll be an empty threat for a very long time and then it'll come in as a plot device somewhere. But like, she might just be hedging, you know? She might just be like, Cassie puts this idea out there and maybe I need it later or something.
Yeah.
Nightmares are nice.
Yeah, she wakes up from a nightmare. This theme continues, and she's having a bad one, and her sister wakes her up from it. And it's so bad that she runs and she throws up. Which is gross, Rachel. It's gross.
Because she's dreaming of maggots?
Yeah,
right?
she's dreaming of maggots eating a dead cat. She's a shrew. There's a shrew eating the maggots and the dead flesh, and she's the shrew.
Yikes on bikes, dude. Poor kid.
Right? This book is graphic.
It's so graphic. Yeah, it's really exhaustingly graphic.
Well, the next morning she sees Jake, and he comments on how she looks, and she's like, oh, I guess I didn't sleep well if I look as bad as you say. And Jake, in a move that I wish more people would learn, says, I didn't say you looked bad. I just said you looked tired. Those are important words, and I think we all need to remember them.
Yeah,
but he actually confesses in this scene that he also had, like, some dreams, and he had some...
Not nightmares.
But not nightmares. He had cool tiger dreams. But he is still secretly afraid that they may have to do what he considers to be the scariest thing he can think of for some reason, and that is morph into bugs. So we've just pinged that a second time.
We got a
second mention of morphing into bugs.
Yeah, and he also mentions that. So there's an interesting thing here. One, like they're carrying more into their human morphs from these animal morphs than maybe we expected in the first book. That's kind of interesting. And then also, Jake wants to morph into a dog when he's depressed, which I think he didn't have to say that for me to know that.
No, he says that enough in the first book, but he's telling Rachel, and that's something.
Yeah.
So Melissa's here, and she's crying like usual, typical Melissa.
God, she's so sad. She's so sad.
Her eyes were red and swollen.
What's the song? This is the story of Melissa. She
cried a river and drowned herself. No one noticed because her mom and dad were human controllers.
When she cries.
Melissa asks Rachel, what's wrong? Melissa says, what's wrong? Everything is wrong, and nothing is wrong, but just the same, everything is wrong.
Slow down.
And Rachel says, Melissa, what are you talking about?
Oh my god. I just can't handle that.
And she says, leave me alone. Everything is changed.
And then Rachel's like, you need to tell me your darkest secrets right now. Like, you need to tell me everything that's wrong.
And then, after Melissa leaves, in a hurry, after not telling her anything other than the vague statement, my mom and dad, ... Chapman appears, and Rachel's like, oh my god, what do I do?
He just charged. He heard Melissa about to say something and ran over. Also, there's a line here that says, a note that Chris took, where Rachel says, see, you have to realize that this was the man who... I can't say it without laughing. See you at what? Do you know the note?
What's the note? I'm so sorry.
See, you have to realize that this was the man who had once directed a Hork-Bajir soldier to kill us all if he caught us. And Chris wrote, Chapman directed the school musical starring a murderous Hork-Bajir. So I was just reading it and thinking, see, you have to realize that this was the man who once directed a Hork-Bajir musical.
That's exactly
the all-Hork-Bajir production of Footloose. It did not go over well.
Foot sharp, arm sharp.
You have to realize that this is who it was.
It's incredible to hear you read that, because that's exactly how it happened in my brain. Like, I remember...
I think that's what it was. I knew it once I read it after.
I got to the end of the sentence and was so depressed to find out it was far more reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, but Rachel's, more trauma. She's remembering that he directed a Hork-Bajir soldier to kill us all if he caught us, kill us and save only our heads for identification. That kind of thing sticks in your mind.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it, Rachel?
And Chapman, who has no idea, but also is just a creep, says, "What's the matter with you, Rachel? A little jumpy this morning?" And he's saying that someone working through the fact that they're traumatized.
School in the 90s, man.
School in the 90s, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, or at least until next time. See you soon!